Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rising. Krystal Ball, what is in your crystal ball today? I haven't done that yet all year. Been waiting for it.
There are so many cool Krystal Ball name jokes. Fact check, not true. So lots of things. Nancy Pelosi apparently wants to see the president in handcuffs. Maybe not a surprise, but interesting to hear nonetheless. Joe Biden with a few missteps that his rivals are jumping on, and I know you're looking at some new stuff from YouTube.
Ah, yes, censoring the right. We have that and more coming up on Rising. All right, KB, tell us what's going on in the world.
Well, this morning I am looking at the Biden challenge, the Democratic frontrunner running to a few spots of trouble this morning. It's the lead story on the Hill as well, if we can pull that up. Biden faces first crisis as frontrunner. There's a couple things going on here. A lot of them center around Biden's position on abortion throughout his career, and today his campaign just came out and reaffirmed his support for the Hyde Amendment. Now, the Hyde Amendment, for those of you who don't know, it basically prohibits any federal funds through Medicaid going to abortion coverage. So poor women who are on Medicaid wouldn't be able to get abortion because they wouldn't be able to have access to federal funds. Now, that used to be a very mainstream position in the Democratic Party, even as recently as the Obama administration. But the party has really moved on this, and Biden has now found himself out of step. A lot of the other contenders in the Democratic field sort of pounced on his continued support for the Hyde Amendment. We've got Bernie Sanders' tweet here as one example. He says there is #no middle ground on women's rights. Abortion is a constitutional right under my Medicare for All plan. We will repeal the Hyde Amendment. Elizabeth Warren, Beto among the other candidates who jumped on top of these new comments from the Biden camp. At the same time, we have new reporting from Ryan Grimm, friend of the show, writer over at The Intercept, about how Biden during the Obamacare debate actually worked to try to undermine some of the birth control coverage that came along with that law. He denied the polling that said actually covering women and providing that contraception access would be popular politically. He just didn't believe that it would be. Again, another place where he is out of step with the party of today. And look, I think any one of these things, and you add to that the little bit of minor sort of plagiarism scandal with his climate change plan, any one of these little things I think he could overcome. But potentially the problem here, Buck, is that this is kind of just the beginning, right? Joe Biden has had a long career in Washington as a centrist. He's out of step on climate change. He's out of step on women's rights. You look back at the Anita Hill stuff, that's a problem for him. Criminal justice reform, that's a problem for him. His advocacy for credit card companies, especially in a bankruptcy bill that Elizabeth Warren was pushing back against, that's a problem for him. So I think we are going to see more and more and more of scrutiny over who he was, who he is now, and how that meshes with the Democratic Party.
Where do you think he might be vulnerable in a way that it could change the polls for him? Meaning that he's no longer the clear front runner. Is there one issue, or is it a compilation of death by 1,000 cuts for his candidacy?
I think it's more death by 1,000 cuts. And I also think that the Biden camp's approach so far is foolhardy. They've basically hidden the candidate. I mean, he's not out there on the trail much. He's not doing the town halls we see everybody else doing. Essentially, the first time we're really going to see him, and in a challenging way, is on the debate stage. So there's going to be a massive amount at stake there, and he could be out of practice. I mean, he's not out there taking the slings and arrows that all the other candidates are. So when you have this kind of litany unanswered of ways that Biden is out of step with where the party is and where the energy is, that erodes his support. And then if he doesn't perform well on the debate stage, then you start to go, maybe this isn't the guy to beat Trump.
We'll have to see.
We will see. What are you looking at?
YouTube, that's a major platform out there. Well, people are concerned about censorship because prominent conservative commentator Steven Crowder has recently been demonetized. Now, this is a flip from YouTube's initial decision not to kick him off the platform entirely in response to complaints from a writer for Vox.com. So Steven Crowder actually had some words about the demonetization, which means that he can't make any money off of his videos anymore, that has occurred as a result of YouTube's investigation. Here's Mr. Crowder.
The ability for one to make a living online, and not just on YouTube, but any social media, but particularly YouTube, is about to change drastically, and I would say more than never before.
Now, you might be saying, hold on a second. How is it that he could maintain his ability to stay on the platform but then be demonetized? Well, they said that while he did not break any of the terms of service, so he didn't violate the clear rules of YouTube that can get you kicked off, calling for violence, doxing someone. There are some specific guidelines for YouTube. There's a more general concept that they talked about in their most recent statement, YouTube, called harm to the community, where they assessed overall the impact that Crowder's words and his brand, I suppose, on YouTube has made things more difficult for some people in general. So this has a lot of folks asking, what's next? Now do we have different tiers of punishment based upon political tests? Do we have people that are going to be kicked off of platforms or demonetized from platforms because of offensiveness and not just violation of terms of service? Krystal, I got to say, I got to get kicked off of one of these platforms at some point just because it's among the best press you can get as a conservative out there. So I'm a little upset. I got to figure out a way to get kicked off of Twitter, but only for a day or two. But this does raise a more serious point, and I don't have the answer to it.
Yeah.
Look, I think that there's clearly these companies are run by people out of Silicon Valley. They're all left of center. This is well, from the top down.
Yeah.
It's not everyone who works there. What do conservatives do about it, though? We're going to complain about it a lot, but I think this is kind of the new mainstream media narrative where the deck is stacked against us, and that's going to be what we talk about. I don't know what else.
Look, we are sanitizing this a little bit. The stuff he said is vile, and anyone would say offensive.
But he didn't get kicked off the platform for violation of terms of service.
That being said, I think this whack-a-mole approach that the big tech companies are taking is absurd, counterproductive, and not going to work. Look, the fact of the matter is the whole YouTube platform is built around pushing people through their algorithm to more and more offensive and extreme content. So rather than responding to, this is basically mob justice. He said things that were very offensive. People got upset about it online, and YouTube decided they had to deal with it because they had a PR issue, right? That's what happened. Rather than taking the whack-a-mole approach, you really have to rethink all of these sort of underlying incentives that are built into these systems. Otherwise, this debate is never going to end. Because that's what's going on here. They are built to be basically extremist machines. So change that, and maybe we won't have this issue.
Right, they think that they're addressing it, but where they draw the lines creates even its own series of problems. There's actually an effort right now on YouTube to get rid of all the extremist content, but I don't think anyone thinks that Steven Crowder is a jihadist who's trying to get people to wage war or something.
Just a nasty homophobe.
So, next on Rising. Is it possible to have a trade relationship in which both Americans and Mexicans get a fair shake?
That is what Michigan Democratic Congressman Andy Levin is encouraging. He talks about the politics of trade and more with Hill TV's Jamal Simmons. That when Rising returns.